So last season did not end on the exact note that Harris and Armstrong wanted. An 8th place finish may have been above the media expectations, but for the taskmaster of a manager trying to get the club into the Premier League, being outside of the playoff places in the upcoming championship season was just simply not going to cut the mustard. Especially as other teams across various leagues were beginning to sniff around for Macaulay Langstaff's services. Armstrong had to yet again have another conversation about selling him if an acceptable bid came across the table.
Here we go again.
Oh, Adrian Pajazidi also decided 1 year in the championship was more than enough for him, as he forced a move to Strasbourg to have an easier time winning promotion in a Farmers League or something along those lines.
Bonne dipped out for France, innit?
Who even cares? Knots made a profit on him anyway, and Armstrong proceeded to use it to bring a much cheaper option in midfield in free transfer Freddie Potts. Wingback Ben Cresceni was also acquired shortly after, along with backup keeper Johnny Shovsbo, and he sold youngsters Daniel Oyetunde, Jack Morehouse, Aiden Harris, and Ethan Wheatley for profit. Although with Eaton, Armstrong did slap a loan back clause for the entirety of the upcoming season on him, just in case. But for all of the young players that Armstrong bought over the last 2 years from bigger clubs and sold them on profit, don't worry, he went ahead and grabbed a whole new batch of those kids to start the year.
I am not their leader. I am their father. That's the difference.
So after all of that, the 2026-27 season was upon us, and Notts County opted to start it with a mixed bag of results all over the place. Their Carabao Cup campaign saw them fight their way to the third round with a 3-1 win against Carlisle and then a 3-2 win against Colchester, with a late game winner from Ruben Rodriguez?
Yeah!
Armstrong decided to bring one of the key contributors to Notts' escape from the National League a few years back into the fold midway through August to help bolster the midfield rotation, especially in the Championship, where the Magpies had won their fair share of games, but also had a draw against Sunderland to start the season, plus a pair of rough losses against Ipswich and Bristol City. Fullback Thomas Sung was also brought in on a free transfer, and Manchester City's Isaiah Dadamasco was brought on loan during the August stretch, making this Armstrong's busiest stretch during a transfer window yet. Something that would prove to be an understatement as the summer transfer window was coming to a close on September 1st. As the deadline window started, Armstrong brought in Sifo Mbule, better known in his home country as the Master Chef, to strengthen the midfield. Mbule's preference for important games caused Armstrong to pay a rare transfer fee to bring him to the United Kingdom from South Africa. Pleased with himself, Armstrong was ready to move on to the next match in the Carabao. So, remember that last contract extension that Langstaff signed? It included a £15 million release clause, and Bournemouth in the Premier League had been the team to finally meet it. Langstaff would leave the club only 6 goals shy from matching Les Brad's goals record with the Magpies, and that departure sent Armstrong into panic mode. Did I mention they had that third round game of the Carabao Cup against Blackpool on deadline day? Because that's a thing that's happening. In fact, it takes a massive effort from Ethan Wheatley to save this game from being a disaster. And on penalties, Heggie once again showcases why he's become the starting goalie for the long haul, as Notts managed to survive 5-4 on penalty kicks to advance. Thankfully, in the aftermath of the cup game, Chelsea had a 20-year-old prospect in Jimmy J. Morgan that they allowed to be loaned out at no cost to Notts County. But to Armstrong, Morgan wasn't going to be enough. Desperately, they managed to find and sign 24-year-old French striker Seko Mata just prior to the closure of the deadline window, even if it came at a hefty price. Good thing that Langstaff transfer fee ensured the club was going to be in decent shape for a while. The Frenchman would acclimate himself to the team and Armstrong's formations throughout all of September, as he scored 5 goals through the course of the month and helped the team to 3 wins and a draw to keep him in the bubble of a playoff spot. The 5-game unbeaten streak that Notts County was on would come to an end after a 2-1 loss against Luton Town, but they'd recover through the remainder of October with another 3 wins in a row, draws against Norwich and Burnley, and then capping off the month with a 3-1 win against AFC Fylde in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup. Their reward for their solid cup run would be getting Manchester United in the quarterfinals. Oh, and Mara also got injured for 3 to 4 weeks after the Burnley game. Where are nanomachines when you actually need them? Not start off November with a 1-1 draw against Tom Brady's Birmingham City, but thanks to Ruben Rodriguez's efforts later in the month, Notts County get their first Nottingham Derby victory in a decade plus with a 1-0 win over Nottingham Forest. The team does manage to trend upward, using the Derby win to springboard to a pair of wins against Rotherham United and Hull City, putting them in 4th place in the championship to end November and having them only 4 points away from 1st place Blackburn Rovers. They got the draw for the 3rd round of the FA Cup, putting them against Leeds United, and now there was a December stretch that was going to keep them extremely busy. The month starts with a 1-1 draw against Derby County that still has the Magpies keeping pace. Okay, why am I hearing an ambulance again? Pretty sure he's out for the rest of the season.
God damn it!
This would make the remainder of the year a challenge, as while they deal with Sheffield United swiftly, they end up being outclassed at home by Blackburn Rovers, and next up, it's Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. They would be coming to Meadow Lane for the game, and for the first half of it, there is some cup magic that made it look like it was going to work out, as Sekou Mara and Ruben Rodriguez both scored in the first 30 minutes of the game. That would be immediately derailed by Tyrell Ashcroft making the executive decision to take Garnacho's legs from underneath him for a straight red card. It wouldn't be long after that until Danish Sephiroth cosplayer Rasmus Højlund and spin cycle enthusiast Anthony evened the score in the second half, although Notts County did keep their wits about them even with a man down to drag this entire affair to penalty kicks for the 2nd straight round. And yet again, Hegi would come through in the clutch with a pair of PK saves of both Anthony and Alexandre Penetra, which would eventually set up Thomas Song's winning PK, punching the Magpies' ticket into the Carabao Cup semi-finals. A few days later, the semi-final draw would put him against Arsenal.
So much happening in our world.
The Magpies would go on to wrap up December holding on to 4th place after a draw against Hull City and victories against Stoke and Crystal Palace. That would lead into January, where attacking midfielder Miguel Monsalve, a free transfer signing that happened during the summer, would finally arrive after finishing his time at Independiente Medellin. A draw against Luton Town would start the month, but the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final would see the 5-game unbeaten streak snap as Arsenal beat them 1-0 at the Emirates. The month would not get any better for the Magpies, as they followed that with a loss to Plymouth Argyle, and their 4th round FA Cup matchup against Leeds United saw them draw at home to force a replay, but ended up in defeat at Elland Road. In between these games, Armstrong continued to remain busy in the transfer window as Notts County buys Ronnie Edwards for $2.5 million from Luton Town, while loaning out Todd Kane to Southward for the rest of the season, plus selling Dino Sumu to the MLS's LA Galaxy for £1 million and Lewis Brunt for £2.7 million to Swansea City. Having had enough of this nonsense, low-knee Jimmy J. Morgan snaps them out of their winless streak with 2 stoppage time goals in a 3-2 win against Blackpool. Then they proceed to thrash Barnsley 5-1 as new signing from Norwich in Emmanuel Adegboyega comes in at £2.6 million. A late-game collapse against Bristol City leads into the transfer deadline on February 1st, and with it, the second leg of the Carabao Cup on the same day. Armstrong would use that opportunity to grab Dutch defender Maxim Dekker on loan from the remainder of the season from Burnley just hours prior to the Arsenal game, as the window wrapped up not long afterward and the Gunners made their way to Meadow Lane. It took 35 minutes, but Arsenal found their way to make it a 1-0 game after our Carlos Aristizabal goal that now had Notts County down 2-0 in the aggregate score. The Magpies began to push for chances with a more aggressive approach after that goal, and eventually Ethan Wheatley found the back of the net in the 70th minute to give the team some life. The intensity kept getting upped, and due to Arsenal having a mental lapse on defense, Kedwin Scott was able to get the rebound from an Ethan Wheatley shot, and he scored in the 85th minute to tie up the aggregate, leading this Carabao Cup game into extra time. Chances were plenty for both teams during the two halves, but neither side could find the game-winning goal. At least, that was until the 103rd minute, where Ethan Wheatley pounced on a terrible pass from Ben White and hammered it in to make it 3-2 for the Magpies. Armstrong promptly brought his wingbacks further back, and for the next 20 or so minutes, they defended for their lives and somehow managed to do that, overturning their first leg defeat and punching their ticket to Wembley for the Carabao Cup finals against Liverpool. That had Armstrong quite excited, considering what happened in the Carabao Cup 2 years ago. In the meantime, matches against Coventry, Preston, and Cardiff City see Notts County come out with a draw, win, and loss respectively, while still solidly maintaining their hold on 4th place in the championship table. But with it, the focus now shifted to Notts County's first Carabao Cup final appearance in their history to take on one of England's mightiest teams at Wembley. Within the first 10 minutes, it would be a 1-1 affair as Cody Gakpo opened the scoring with a goal, but Miguel Monsalve followed up swiftly with the tying goal. But that bit of hope felt in the first 15 minutes, well...
The best word I can say, but will describe this, was boom.
Yeah, so Liverpool's firepower was too much to handle as they dominated the rest of the game, walked away with Carabao Cup, and basically de-pantsed Notts County in front of a large crowd.
That's rough, buddy.
A close loss to Burnley and a dominant win against Birmingham followed to wrap up February, and with 10 games left in the championship, the focus for Armstrong and his men were on maintaining their place among the playoff teams. March would see them do that, with wins over Norwich City, Middlesbrough, and Sunderland, along with a draw against Huddersfield to end the month. Just let's not talk about Notts County going into the City Ground and getting their asses kicked 2-0 in the Nottingham Derby this month, shall we? But in the last final games of the season, Notts ends up with a 2-1-2 record that is enough to see them secure 4th place and a playoff semi-final matchup against Coventry City. The first leg of that playoff semi doesn't go so well as Notts concede a late winner to Kerr Smith on a corner kick, and that puts the pressure on Notts County to deliver at Meadow Lane. The drama would escalate in the second leg as the 0-0 draw was carried until the late minutes, where Armstrong was upping the pressure but the team wasn't finding the mark. At least, that was until Jamie J. Morgan, the Chelsea loanee, struck when they needed it most, getting the tying goal at the 87th minute and then the game-winning goal in stoppage time to push the Magpies through to the championship's playoff final, and with it, a second trip to Wembley this season. Cardiff City would be their opponents in the final, as Notts County would hope for better luck than in their previous Wembley trip for the Carabao Cup. Miguel Monsalve would open up the scoring at Wembley in the 25th minute to give Notts the early lead, but Cardiff City got a goal in the 40th minute with a Kamal Soa header. Not to worry, because the Magpies did promptly get the lead right back with a Kedwin Scott goal after a VAR review granted it prior to the end of the first half. The second half became a battle of attrition, as both teams got their chances and Cardiff City pushed for an equalizer, but the Notts defense managed to hold steady, even with a scare in the 89th minute that turned out to be offside due to VAR. After holding on for 7+ minutes of stoppage time, Notts County wins the 2-1, and with it, Harrison Armstrong has helped the squad win promotion into the Premier League. Defying odds yet again, he had finally done what he had set out to do from the very beginning. That achievement is more than enough to have Armstrong win the Championship Manager of the Year award, as Notts was the 3rd best scoring team across the championship, just behind Burnley and Blackburn Rovers. but the mission was complete. Harrison Armstrong had done what he set out to do in the course of 4 seasons, so it'd be par for the course to believe that his next great challenge would be to ensure that Notts County became a consistent presence in the Premier League, right? Right? Okay, what the hell was the point of all this? To suffer all the way through multiple promotions only to give it all up at the apex? Why would you give that up? What would cause you to even consider leaving?
Several months later.
All right, the truth then.
You know what? Let's just move on to our next save.